Everyone's been saying this basically all year, but 2023 really has been an amazing time for gamers. Really, no matter what kind of game you're into, there's probably been something that you've really enjoyed over the last 12 months. So I thought today I would make just a quick video. These are my top 5 games that I have played this year in 2023. I made one of these last year and I really enjoyed making it, so I thought I'd continue the tradition. Now, just a quick note before you tell me that all of my picks are wrong, I might not have played all of the games that have come out this year. In fact, I definitely haven't. This list might have been different depending on what I'd played. For example, I think Spider-Man 2 probably would have been quite high up this list, but I just haven't had a chance to play it yet. There's been so many good games that have come out this year, I haven't managed to get to them all. Now, I promise this is the only game on this list that's sort of a bit of a cheat, and by that what I mean is that it didn't actually come out this year, but this year is the first time that I played this game, and it's Luigi's Mansion 3. This was my entry point into the Luigi's Mansion series. It's a game that I'd wanted to try for quite a few years, but I'd never managed to quite get around to it. To be honest, I was worried that I wouldn't like the combat and the gameplay style, and so I kind of let it slide to one side for a while and didn't pick it up until this year. But I have to say that I'm really glad that I did finally get around to playing it. I did think that the game started off a little bit slow, but once it got going, it was just so creative. Each new floor that was revealed was hugely exciting, and some of my favorites just completely blew me away with their level design, the puzzles, and the enemy types. I'm also a bit of a sucker for good boss design, and I really enjoyed them in this game. They usually had very creative ways to be defeated, or they themselves were very creative and unusual, and that just sort of put the cherry on top of the cake for this game for me. Luigi's Mansion 3 is the first game on this list, top 5 this year. Now, if you'd asked me at the start of this year what I thought my favourite game of 2023 was going to be, I would definitely have put Final Fantasy XVI right at the top. I got into the Final Fantasy series quite late, but I had such a good time playing things like Final Fantasy 15, 7 Remake, and I play 14 like on and off, so all of the marketing for Final Fantasy 16 led me to think it was going to be absolutely fantastic and it would shoot straight to the top of my list this year. So it didn't quite work out that way for me. There was just a little bit too much downtime. That means it's not my top favourite game this year, but it is definitely still good enough to make the list. I think Clive is a great protagonist. Ben Starr, who voices him, I think he did a super job, and rightly now he kind of has the love of the internet. He's kind of become a meme in himself. The highs of this game I really think are amazing. The boss fights are still some of the best gameplay moments that I have played in a long time. The visuals, the emotion behind them, the combat, it's all really on point, I think, for some truly epic encounters. Not to mention, this game has some of my favorite music, not just of the Final Fantasy series, but I think of all games. For example, the Marble boss fight in particular, it just really sort of like gets me hyped up. And the music from this game has joined my regular rotation of like video game music that I listen to. This one I think was really beloved when it first came out, and it's kind of gotten a bit more divisive over time. And while I can completely understand that, I think for me, it is still up there in the top games that I played this year. Now, number 2 and number 3 on this list are very close, and I kept switching them around, and even now really, I'm not quite sure which way they should be, but I've settled on it this way. Number 3 is Super Mario Wonder. Super Mario Wonder was a bit of a surprise release this year, and really it's just such a delight to play. This, I think, is 2D Mario as it should be. The game is so creative and wonderful. It controls really perfectly, and every time you start playing a new level, you're just in for a treat. The inclusion of multiplayer works really well, I think, if you're looking for something to play with the family. And I did like the inclusion of badges. I thought it could have been fleshed out just a little bit more, but I think it's got a lot of potential behind this system, and I really hope that they keep at it for the next game and improve on it further. You can really tell with this game that every single level has been crafted with love, and it's just been honed down to basically pure fun with nothing else left in. Each new level that you start, you're sort of wondering what clever, inventive new idea is waiting to bring you joy, and the Wonder Seeds, I think, just double that fun every single time. These turn the level completely on their heads at times, and on the odd occasion that I missed one by accident by the time I reached the end, I was like genuinely disappointed that I hadn't gotten to see what should have been in there, and I've gone back to replay it and to try and get that seed. I thought the new power-ups were fun as well. I know some people didn't really like the elephant and thought it was a bit goofy and silly, but I thought it was funny, and especially combined with the badge that gives you the glider, Mario's hat just becomes huge, and I like that kind of fun, silly thing. This is a game where if I've not got too long to play and I just want to play something that I know is going to be all good fun, no filler at all, Super Mario Bros. Wonder is what I go for, and that is why it's made it onto this list. The sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is now in development. That one sentence sent the internet into an absolute frenzy. How could a game possibly live up to Breath of the Wild, which was arguably the best game on the Switch at the time? Well, in my mind, Tears of the Kingdom not only lived up to it, but I think it surpassed it. Every single addition that they made to this game made it better. It gave the player more freedom, it allowed the player to be more creative in this sandbox that Nintendo has sort of gifted to us all. Now, I usually find it pretty cool when there is the sky involved in a game somehow. You know, for example, think of BioShock Infinite. So I actually really enjoyed the Sky Islands, but I do wish there had been more of the giant complex ones in there, like the tutorial Sky Island. I would have liked more of those. On the other hand, I still don't really understand how Nintendo managed to keep the depths under the radar, but honestly, well done to them. It was amazing to discover this entire new layer to the game that just hadn't been shown in trailers at all. And the fact that you actually have to charter it out bit by bit too is something that I don't remember seeing in any other game before. You know, bringing light to a whole world of darkness beneath the ground, it really does sort of bring a new meaning to having to explore and discover the game world. Now, I did enjoy Breath of the Wild, but one area that I thought they could improve on a bit was the story, and I really think Tears of the Kingdom did do it better in the end. I was much more drawn to the Dragon Tears and how they told the story of the game compared to finding the photographs locations. I think it was just a bit easier, and it was so cool to see the glyphs in the distance, you know, while falling from the sky, and then if you're anything like me, you'd completely change course and just ignore what you're currently doing to try and get to those glyphs and find out what it was that the tier was going to be. And I think the story of this game did actually deliver. I loved piecing it all together, and the final memory, plus, you know, I think the final moments of this game did genuinely kind of get me emotional. A lot of Breath of the Wild had been spoiled for me by the time I got to play it, so in a sense, Tears of the Kingdom was kind of my Breath of the Wild. I got to discover that game along with everyone else at the same time, and it's a game that I will remember for a long time. So number one is Baldur's Gate 3. Now, I pre-ordered this game back when it was in early access. I played it for a couple of hours, and then honestly I put it down again and left it. Over time, I did hear a lot about the new additions as time went on, but I didn't want to play through the first act only, and I felt like that would kind of spoil it for myself. And so over time it sort of slipped to the back of my mind when I wasn't playing it, and by the time the full release was actually coming around, I wasn't too sure how much I wanted to play with it. I'd kind of lost interest. I'd picked up games in the past like Pillars of Eternity or Tyranny and just never stuck with them, so I'd pretty much convinced myself that this would be the same. But I was so wrong. Baldur's Gate 3 is Game of the Year for a reason. I'm a fan of Dungeons & Dragons anyway, and this is the closest that I've come to playing it in a video game. Some of the rules have been changed, sure, but mostly they feel like good changes made for the better to streamline the rules for a new format. Play as whoever you want, play in whatever way you want, make whatever decision you want, and all in a world that is full to the brim of well-realized characters, thrilling situations, and tiny little secrets that can lead you to get sidetracked for hours. And I do mean that you will get sidetracked for hours with this game. I played for something like 25 hours of this game on Steam Deck, got to the start of Act 2, and then at that point I just happily launched a brand new campaign just because one of my friends mentioned playing together. I've actually stopped playing solo now because I'm just having a lot of fun playing co-op, and I just want to play it that way instead, and maybe later I'll go back to playing it on my own. We've just reached Act 2 again and started doing something that I completely missed on my first playthrough just because I made some different decisions and I didn't listen to certain characters that I did listen to in my first playthrough. And that really just says a lot about this game, how different each run can be depending on what decisions you make. Now, my friend and I, we've mostly been on the same page as we go through, talking about our decisions, or maybe one of us will just say, you know, go for it, you make decisions here, I'm happy to see what happens. But we have just hit a point where we separately had to make the same decision and we chose differently. I'm absolutely desperate to see what happens next, whether one of us made like the good choice or the bad choice, you know, what the resolutions to this are. But we might not actually get to play again for a few weeks because the holidays coming up, you know, people going home for Christmas, that kind of thing. And I've got to say, it's kind of eating away at me. That's how invested I've sort of become in our co-op playthrough and how invested I am in the story, that I am genuinely sad that I can't see what's about to come for a little while. This game is a dream for RPG fans. If you've got any interest in these types of games, fantasy worlds, well-written stories, and amazingly written characters. If you like all of this, and yet somehow you still actually haven't tried Baldur's Gate 3 yet, then you should definitely give it a shot. This is the game that I've spent more hours playing this year than any other one, and as well as Baldur's Gate 3 being the game of the year, Baldur's Gate 3 is my top game of this year. So there we have it. Those are my top 5 games for 2023 that I played this year. What did you think of the list? It was honestly really hard to make. There were plenty of games that have been really good this year. Some of them didn't quite make the cut. And don't forget, some of them I haven't played this year. So if you're wondering where things like the Resident Evil 4 remake are, you know, I haven't played it, Spider-Man 2 haven't played it, Alan Wake haven't played it. There's still loads that I haven't got around to. Maybe in 2024 I will get to some of these games. I would really love to hear what your favorite games of this year are, so please let me know down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episode.